Hi, I'm Charlie from Berd, and today I'm going to give you a demonstration on how to use TRUDI. So I'm going to go through a basic operation of taking a wheel that's been depth set, that has some tension on all the spokes, and go through the whole process of building this metal spoked wheel. The first step of this process is we are going to go to our tablet and we're going to select the recipe for building the wheel. The recipe is a really important part of this process. It defines how the wheel responds in the algorithm. It defines how well the system's going to work on the wheel. We have to select the rim material, either carbon or aluminum. So this is a carbon rim, so I'll pick carbon. Then we select the spoke type. This is a Supreme race spoke, so it's a 1.8 millimeter butted spoke. I'll select that in the dropdown. It's a 29-inch wheel, so I'll select 29 inches and 32 spokes. The system works with a wide variety of rim materials, sizes, and spoke types now, but that's going to continue to increase as we continue to make updates and add more things to the system. The next step of the process is I am going to add our rubber band indicator onto the rim. The rubber band indicator indexes the wheel as it spins around so that we know where the wheel is and we can tell how the lateral and the radial measurements correspond to the wheel as it spins around. So I'm going to take this, and it has this orange plug that I'm going to put inside the valve hole and then wrap it around the wheel. And connect it on the other side. This is actually easier done if it's in the truing stand. It just makes it easier to hold everything. The next step of this process is we're going to start by measuring dish for the wheel. So to measure dish, we're going to put the high tension side of the wheel to the left. This is a rear wheel, so that means we're going to take the free hub body and put it on the left side of the truing stand and put it in like this. Everything is adjustable on here. So that means we can move this system up and down. If we have a smaller or a bigger wheel, we can move the gauges left and right, depending if we're doing a front wheel or a rear wheel, to make sure that these bearings are seated onto the rim. And this is a really neat system, the way this works, because it's just one contact point with two bearings that connect to the rim. The next step of this process is for me to lift up the wheel advancement motor and then spin the wheel and do 2 complete revolutions. So this is going to ding as it goes around, as this rubber band hits the bearings, and it'll do 2 measurements to ensure that we get equivalent data and to make sure we have a good dish reference point before we measure the lateral and radial. So now we're going to, again, put the wheel in, but this time with the high tension side to the right. We'll press the button on the top of the screen and again get 2 measurements so that now we'll get the lateral data, the radial data, and we'll get the dish. On the screen, we can see we've got a dish of about 1.4 millimeters. So it's 1.4 millimeters away from being perfectly centered. The lateral runout is a little over 3 millimeters, and the radial runout is about 0.4 millimeters. We can have a wheel that's widely out of true. It has a fairly low tension. The most important point to start this process is that we have some tension on the wheel so that we can measure the tension, but it can be highly variable. It can be anywhere from 20 to 100 kilograms of force, just enough to be able to measure it with a tensiometer. And then we're going to bring up the tension in true all in one step. So the next step of the process is to take our tensiometer. This is a Wheel Fanatic based tensiometer that is hardwired directly into the system, and we're going to measure the tension on each of the spokes. But we start on the right side of the wheel first, and then we'll move to the left side of the wheel. And this rubber band indicator references the 0 point of the rim. So this is 0, which means the first spoke is spoke 1, the second spoke is spoke 2. I'm starting on the right side of the wheel, which means that I'm going to do all of the even spokes first. So I'll start going around. And what you can see is that if you look at the center of the app screen, as I put the tensiometer on the spokes, it takes a 0 measurement first. So it essentially measures the thickness of the spoke. Then I release the tensiometer and it measures the tension. And what's really cool about the system is that it automatically converts the data from the tensiometer into a kilograms of force. So in the center of that screen, after each measurement, it shows the kilograms of force tension on each spoke. Now I've done all the right side spokes, so I'll switch to the left side. Again, we can see those tensions in the center of the screen: 36 kilograms of force, 34 kilograms of force, 39 kilograms of force, and so on as we go around this wheel. The amazing part at TRUDI is that we take all of this data. We get the lateral data, we get the radial data, we get the tension data, and then it calculates exactly what to do to be able to true the wheel in a single pass. So now we have all of this data in the system, and we don't need to visualize the data, but we can if we want to. So if I click on the screen, we can go to this other page where we can now see these curves all the way around the wheel. The top curve is the lateral, where we can see that lateral displacement as we go around. The next one is radial. The third one down is the tension spread on the left side of the wheel. The fourth is the tension spread on the right side of the wheel. And then this final graph at the bottom is the magic as part of this system. What the system has now done is it's calculated exactly how many turns to do on each spoke, so that in one pass we can go around and not only bring up the tension for this wheel, but we can also make sure it gets in dish, laterally true and radially true, all in more or less one round. So I'm going to go back to the screen just to show you a couple more things on this home screen before we go ahead and true this wheel. The other thing we can do is we can set what we want the targets to be. So right now the dish target is set to 0, which means that we're going to be aiming for a wheel that has that is perfectly centered in terms of dish. But if we wanted to have an offset dish, we could also change that with this top measurement here. The dish range is set to 0.35 millimeters, which means that's our tolerance for our dish. And we're going to try to make sure it's within 0 plus or minus 0.35 millimeters. The lateral range is set to 0.5 millimeter. I'm going to reduce this down to 0.3 millimeters. I'm also going to change our radial tolerance to 0.3 millimeters. The high side tension average, this is the target tension that we're trying to build to. I'm going to target 110 kilograms of force for this wheel with a max tension of 120 and a minimum tension of 100. So we're targeting 110 kilograms of force on average for the high tension side of this wheel, with a minimum of 100 or a maximum of 120. And then the left and the right tension ranges are set to 20 kilograms of force, and that's a good starting point for building any new wheel. So I'll hit confirm. And then the other quick thing I'll show here is that if we think that we made a mistake with the tensiometer, if we think that we measured the wrong spoke, or we just took a bad tension measurement, we can actually go back to the tension graph and just pick a spoke and then check to make sure that that tension is correct. So this spoke 26 on the high tension side is a little bit higher than all the rest of them. I think that it probably is correct, but I'm just going to go and check that one anyways. So I'll start at the valve hole here and then count as I go around the wheel: 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22, 24, 26. I'll put the tensiometer on this spoke and take a couple of repeat measurements, and it looks like these measurements are the same as what it was before. So in this case, it's not going to fix the tension. It's just going to remain basically as it was. So now what I'm going to do is I've got all of my data. I've got my targets in the system. Now I'm going to true the wheel. So I'm going to press the button at the bottom, which is full true. And what full true does is this does in a complete round around the wheel. So we're going to touch each spoke once to bring up the tension. And just like measuring the tension, I'm going to start on the right side of the wheel first, then move to the left side. So in the center of the screen, it says spoke 2. So I'm going to go to spoke 2, and use a spoke holding tool. Since these are round spokes, I need to hold them to make sure they don't twist, and put it on the first spoke and press the button. Then I'll go to spoke 4, spoke 6. If you look at that center circle inside of the app while I'm doing this, you can see that it says how many turns it's going to do. It's not really necessary that I look at that as I go around, but it's it's just kind of fun to see. And the number of turns to me are seemingly random. It doesn't really, there's no way for me to understand how that works because there's so much complexity going on with the wheel. But since we have this algorithm that's solved everything, it knows exactly how many spokes to do on each spoke, and it's programmed that into the drill so that I just press the button on the drill once. Now I've done all the right side spokes, and now it says spoke 1. So I'll go to the left side of the wheel and start on spoke 1, spoke 3. And again, you can see all of these turns right now are positive turns, and that's because we were at a pretty low tension. We're building up the tension. If we were truing a wheel that was already tight and there was a particularly tight spoke, we could also have negative turns. The drill will turn positive or negative, just depending on what we need. It'll figure out exactly what to do. Now, these ones are pretty small turns. These are more like a quarter of a turn, whereas we've seen some much bigger turns on some other spokes that have been closer to 2 turns all at once. Okay, so at this point, I'm done with my first round of truing. This was a wheel that was depth set. I brought up the tension. That round of truing is going to get it pretty true. The next step is for us to take this over to our stress relief machine and make sure that we've stress relieved all of these spokes before we do our final round of truing. Just for fun, I'm going to check and see where we're at this point. We don't need to flip the wheel in the truing machine again. We've already done that once to get our dish reference point. At this point, all we need to do is just press the button to spin it again. And you can see now that wheel that we initially had that was more than 1 millimeter out of dish, it was 3 millimeters out of laterally true, and over 0.3 on the radial, is now perfectly within spec on both dish and radial, and it's just a little bit out of spec on lateral. And that's okay, because we can clean that up in the second round of truing. So I'm going to take the wheel out now. I'm going to bring it over to our squishing machine. And we'll do a quick squish on both sides of this wheel. So I'll put this in, and we'll push on the high tension side first. And then we'll flip the wheel, and we'll push on the low tension side. So we'll take the wheel back out, and we'll bring it back to the machine. Again, we're going to put it back in the machine with the high tension side on the right. We don't need to flip the wheel, and we'll go through now and we'll just get our full set of measurements again.
Measurement complete.
This wheel did change just a little bit. It looks like it went a little bit out of dish as we did that squish, and that's normal. You expect things to change a little bit with that stressing or de-stressing process. So I'll go around and I'll get our tensions again. Okay, so the wheel did go a little bit out of dish. The tension has dropped a little bit because of that de-stressing process. So we're at 101 kilograms. Our target's 110. So I think I'll go around and I'll do one more full true on this wheel, and it's already ready to go. So I'm just going to take the drill and start on spoke 2 and make a full pass around the wheel. And again, this is going to, at this point, do more or less this final true for this wheel. It's going to take and bring up the tension slightly. Should fix that lateral trueness, and then get it into a perfect dish as well. So I've gotten all the way around, and now I'll press the button again to measure the lateral and radial. And at this point, this wheel should be perfectly done, and it looks great. The dish is within 0.1 millimeters, the radial within 0.12, and the laterals within 0.26 millimeters. At this point, we could be done with the wheel, but I just want to show you a couple more features and things that we can do. So the other thing we can do is something called a quick true. If you have a wheel that you don't think you need to do a full pass around the wheel, it's just very slightly out laterally or radially, you can do a quick true, which just picks the 4 most important spokes to touch without having to touch all the wheel or all the spokes as we go around the wheel. And it's calculated this, and it shows us which spoke to do. So it says go to spoke 1, as it shows the number 1 in the center of the screen. So we'll go to 1, put the drill on, and then it just happens to be spoke 2 is the next spoke, spoke 4, and spoke 7. So 4, 5, 6, 7. And now it's made just very minor adjustments to be able to slightly improve the lateral, most likely on this wheel. We'll do one more quick check here just to see how well it did after that additional quick true. And it looks like we've very slightly improved this wheel. I think it's pretty much as good as this one will get. Yeah, the last thing that I want to show you is that as you look at this pie in the center of the screen, you see that the pie slices are either green or gray. Gray means that those are either not measured or out of spec, and green pie slices are in spec. And it's a really nice visual indicator to be able to see that the wheel is complete. Once you have a green slice for all of those 6 slices, and you have a green circle, the wheel is done. So if I go around and measure the tension now to do a final QC on this wheel, we'll get to see what is the average high side tension and what are the ranges on the left and the right side. And we'll be able to make sure that the wheel is within the specs that we set. And it'll then give us an opportunity to print those out in a nice report that we can provide to the customer. Whether or not we're for a wheel manufacturer and building wheels, we could provide that report to the customer who's buying a new wheel. Or if we were just truing a wheel in a bicycle shop, we could also provide that report to the customer to show them how good of a job TRUDI did truing their wheels. This final QC step isn't necessary. So it's, if you didn't feel it was worth the time, you could skip this step, but it's definitely a nice thing to be able to show a customer. So the final specs on this wheel, everything is now within spec. The lateral, the radial, the dish, the tension variation on the left and right side are less than 15 kilograms of force, which is great. The high side average tension is 108 kilograms, which is very close to our 110 kilogram target. And again, we can come here and we can look at these graphs to see that everything is in spec. These green bars on the screen show the spec, and the data is all within those, which is just a nice visual indicator to see that everything's done. So that's TRUDI. I hope that gave you a good demonstration of just one example of building a metal spoke wheel. And the system is going to be continually updated over time with more and more functions to work with carbon spokes and other types of wheel. And that's one great thing about it all being connected to the network, is to be able to get those updates.